On February 22nd, I migrated my entire PTCGO card collection to Pokemon TCG Live, believing that the Pokemon Company would release a good game in a playable state. Even though I knew it was a beta, this was a brand new game from a billion-dollar company, and it seemed as though it was only a few weeks away from a full launch. Well, like Julia Michaels, TCG Live has issues. So after 7 months of being stuck in the new game, I decided to return to PTCGO. Unlike TCG Live, which has a skippable tutorial and rewards you with a bunch of free decks right off the bat, PTCGO's tutorial is mandatory and takes about 15 minutes to complete. At the end, you get no decks. Instead, you get a random Pokemon V and a random trade locked pack. Well, you also get the Mental Might theme deck, which came out like 7 years ago and is terrible, as well as some random expanded cards, but that's it. So Live easily has the advantage in that category. PTCGO did give me a couple packs for redeeming my first code though, definitely not complaining about that. Another area where Live has a clear-cut advantage is the act of building up your collection. Getting it up in PTCGO was a painful, tedious experience to say the least. Thankfully, my community really got behind me and thrusted their pilot, but even then, I still had to painstakingly go through all the cards and mark what I needed as for want. If I was to do this on my own as a brand new player, I'd have to redeem about 100 packs each from every standard set, then buy a few hundred Lost Origin codes to use them to trade for all the missing cards, all while cross-referencing with PTCGO prices and wading through the myriad of scam trades that cause the trading post to load for like 20 minutes before you get anywhere. It's effectively a weeks-long process that costs hundreds of dollars just to get yourself in a competitive position on PTCGO. Otherwise, you're spending months grinding the ladder in tournaments if you want to be a true free-to-player. On TCG Live, all you have to do is buy 400 celebrations codes, redeem them, which isn't exactly a quick process either, and you'll have enough credits to craft whatever cards you need for a year. Going back to PTCGO truly made me appreciate just how helpful the crafting system is in Live. It's a massive time saver and in the long run, a money saver as well. Unfortunately, that's about where Live's advantages disappear. After building a few budget decks, I began my first PTCGO stream in 7 months. I had to do it ahead of schedule because TCG Live was offline for the second time that particular week because of disastrous matchmaking issues. The improvements on PTCGO are immediately noticeable. As soon as I entered into my first game, I was bombarded with futuristic gameplay features like knowing who's going first and a game log, which details what you and your opponent have done so far. I also didn't have to look away when a new Pokemon entered the active spot, because I wasn't blasted in the face by a million seizure-inducing effects. Probably my favorite feature that I've missed in Live is just being able to hover over an energy or a tool card. In Live, if you hover your mouse over an attached energy, it embiggens the Pokemon because the game apparently can't tell the difference. If you do it on PTCGO, the game is smart enough to know you want to read up on the energy and enlarges that instead. It's such an insanely futuristic feature from 10 years ago. On top of all that, PTCGO is just faster and smoother. TCG Live loves to waste your time with a billion unskippable animations. PTCGO is a quick shooter that is able to handle multiple things going on at once without breaking. TCG Live can only do one thing at a time, which is why the games take forever. Going back to PTCGO felt like stepping into the future after playing Live for 7 months. And after the battle, I was presented with a wealth of information. I could send my opponent a friend request, I could see their deck list, and I could check important stats from the battle. In comparison, this is what you get at the end of a battle in Live. If you lose, you get taunted with an unskippable scene. If you win, your avatar's ankle clips through the socks. Then you're given a weak screen telling you nothing, and worst of all, you can't see your opponent's list. This is a massive negative if you ever face something interesting and want to try it out, and since in-game chat doesn't exist in Live, it's not like you can ask your opponent for it after the game. But easily the craziest, most insane, most difficult to implement feature is what I'm about to show you. It's not in TCG Live, so I can only imagine how impossible it is to add since it's only in a 10-year-old game. Are you ready? Oh my god, can you believe it? I can see my entire deck list in a full screen view rather than having it scrunched in the corner. And even better, it links the evolutions together rather than just putting them wherever at random. Oh, and another crazy future feature from 10 years ago is being able to select your deck in the matchmaking screen. In TCG Live, you have to go back to your deck collection, choose active deck, and then return to the matchmaking screen. It's an unnecessary headache. It's crazy to me that the developers of TCG Live had the blueprint for a successful game right in front of them and decided to ignore it. PTCGO isn't perfect, but it attracts tens of thousands of players each month. The Live devs decided to completely ignore PTCGO and create their own game with disastrous results. Basic quality of life features like knowing who's going first aren't present, and even something as simple as battling a friend becomes a frustrating task. That's because, for whatever reason, that friend won't show up in your list until you do a full restart. After restarting, only one of you can send the battle request, otherwise nothing will happen. It's created so many unnecessary headaches on stream when I just want to battle a viewer. When I returned to PTCGO, it took seconds to get everything set up. I'll be doing a full head-to-head comparison between PTCGO and Live in an upcoming video. This was just a quick recap of my experience returning to PTCGO after being stuck in purgatory. I mean, TCG Live. Because I migrated my account, all of my cards are being held hostage in Live by the Pokemon Company. There's no option to demigrate. And something I never noticed until playing PTCGO is that I don't play Live unless it's for the purpose of streaming. I'm not grinding away off stream or anything. Yet when I downloaded PTCGO again, I found myself messing around in theme with Mental Might and enjoying myself. PTCGO is just the more fun game to play. This is partially due to the speed of play, the simplistic yet welcoming aesthetic, and the fact that I don't have to cross my fingers, toes, and butt cheeks every time I enter matchmaking hoping that it actually works. Because guess what? PTCGO's matchmaking actually just works. There are a couple of complaints I have about PTCGO where Live wins though. For starters, the math. TCG Live does the math for you on attacks, calculating how much you'll do after everything's taken into account. For someone like me who often makes mistakes, this is a helpful feature. On top of that, somebody like Comfy gets an arrow after using flower selecting on Live, letting you know its ability has been used. And finally, I just prefer the camera angle of Live. So it's not as though PTCGO is 100% better than Live, it's more like 95% better. Now, despite the fact that PTCGO is better in nearly every aspect, I have to say Pokemon TCG Live is the better game for fresh players. I know, hear me out. Because of the crafting system in Live, you will save hours and hours and plenty of money. Yes, PTCGO has the better in-game rewards long term, but if you want to have a tier 1 deck on day 1 in either game, you will have to spend money. And you'll be spending $60 on Live as opposed to about $600 on PTCGO. Needless to say, I'm disappointed to have this take. The Pokemon Company has made terrible decision after terrible decision with Live and they shouldn't be rewarded for that. But it doesn't change the harsh reality. Live is just easier to get into when it comes to competitive play. Is it more fun? Hell no. My next video will show just how much worse Live is than PTCGO when it comes to even basic things. But because of that stupid crafting system being so well implemented, and PTCGO's trading economy being so wildly expensive, Live is the smarter option, and I hate myself for saying that. That being said, if you're brand new to the Pokemon TCG and have no idea what you're doing, download PTCGO. TCG Live gives you a bunch of free decks, then basically just throws you to the wolves. Because of how poorly the ranked matchmaking is handled in Live, you could literally face me in your first game. But on PTCGO, you have the theme format. It's the perfect starting point for anyone who wants to learn the ins and outs of the Pokemon TCG, while also having fun and unlocking new decks and cards at your own pace. Then when you're forced to migrate to Live, you'll have a leg up on everyone else. Live is strictly for those wanting to jump right in and be the best like several people already are. Basically, if you want to be a true free-to-player, get PTCGO. If you want to spend money and have it go far, get Live. Of course, I never mentioned the horrible expanded format in TCG Live. It only allows cards from Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, and no one plays it. So going back to PTCGO, I was actually able to play expanded and my favorite deck Volcarona V. What sorcery was this? A Pokemon TCG game that supports more than one format? Insanity! PTCGO is just so much more welcoming. Whereas TCG Live is like falling into hell and the devil greeting you with a pitchfork to your butt meat. Going back to PTCGO really was a breath of fresh air. I could choose between a variety of game modes and I wasn't creeped out by the avatars always trying to take my soul. To sum up, for all intents and purposes, TCG Live is a disappointing game. Not compared to PTCGO, just in general. The Pokemon Company was in way over their heads here and didn't hire the right people to make the right decisions. But if you want a digital Pokemon TCG experience where you don't have to spend $100 every 3 months just to remain competitive, Live is your only option.